everyone. I'm Dr. John Bossetti, founder of ESI, Eye Surgeons International, and I'd like to speak to you about our mission, the elimination of avoidable blindness and restoration of eyesight in Zambia and sub-Saharan Africa. I've been incredibly fortunate. I've lived in the beautiful Napa Valley all my life and had the great privilege of practicing ophthalmology there, helping wonderful people maintain, regain, and improve their eyesight for over 34 years. Now, together with a dedicated group of volunteers, we've taken on this new challenge, working in Zambia, in southern sub-Saharan Africa, another place of great natural beauty where, just like at home, many wonderful people live who also need help from eye surgeons. To help you all understand how we came to dedicating ourselves to this mission, I'd like to tell you how it happened. It wasn't something I expected, but rather something that became unavoidable, something we feel must be done. So this presentation will recount how we came to understand the extent of the problem of blindness in Zambia and sub-Saharan Africa, the reason it exists, and how we can solve it. One note at the start. You can see my blue surgeon's cap. It was made for me by a kind and talented seamstress in Zimba, Zambia, where I've had the great privilege of working at the local eye hospital. We'll talk much more about Zimba and that seamstress a little later. So, a little bit about me. I'm a particular kind of physician, an ophthalmologist, and what my team and I do is try to help people see better, or if they are blind, help them see again. In the developed world, in countries like ours, doctors, and all those who support us, we do a good job in providing excellent medical care, including medical and surgical eye care for the vast majority of our people. We are fortunate. Where we live gives us many advantages. However, for many people, where they live comes with many disadvantages. People in developing countries, most of them, have very poor access and sometimes no access to medical care. Eye care, that is medical and surgical eye care for blinding eye diseases, has the distinction of being in particularly high demand, but in very low supply in most developing countries. If you have a serious eye problem in many developing countries, it is very difficult to obtain good care. And unfortunately, if you don't get good care, you may go blind with devastating consequences for yourself and your family. So we, Eye Surgeons International, we try to fix that. We try to level the playing field when it comes to that thing we do, which is to help people see. We believe that where you live shouldn't determine if you can see or if you will go blind. But unfortunately, for many, where you were born, where you live determines if you will go blind or if you will see. So, why is that? Well, to explain this better, I'd like to tell you a story. In fact, it's kind of a story within the story of why we're dedicating ourselves to eliminating avoidable blindness. It's the story of a brave and trusting woman who traveled many days to try to see again. The story's set in Zimba, a town in Zambia, a very poor country in southern sub-Saharan Africa. It takes place at the Zimba Eye Hospital and Clinic, a small hospital where eye surgeons from around the world have been treating and curing eye disease for 30 years. Note the very skinny cow in the photo. Wandering cows will enter into our story again a little later. Now, before I continue our tale, let's watch a very short film clip created during one of our recent trips to Zimba. I think it will help set the stage and help you understand our story more fully. Okay. I hope that brief film, created by Dr. Fong Bu on one of our recent trips to Zimba, helps you understand what it's like to be one of us, a Westerner who goes to Zimba in Zambia, to the eye hospital there, trying to help. Now, let's continue our story by learning about a woman who came to the Zimba Eye Hospital for that help. Someone we met on that trip. Let me tell you about Mrs. Kaduta. When Mrs. Kaduta, who allowed us to call her Mrs. K, arrived at our clinic, her daughter, Linda, was leading her by the hand. They had traveled for 3 days to reach the only hospital serving about 5 million people across southern Zambia and its neighboring countries, our Zimba Eye Hospital. As Mrs. K was guided down the hallway toward the preoperative exam room, she felt her way along the wall and stopped when she detected the door frame. Linda helped her into the examination chair. I was there, and as I watched Mrs. K move, I already knew what my examination confirmed. She, Mrs. K, was completely blind from mature cataracts in both eyes. As you probably already know, a cataract occurs when the proteins inside the natural lens of the eye become damaged and turn hazy. The natural lens is an M&M shaped and sized structure that sits just behind the iris, the colored part of the eye. Why do these proteins become damaged? Well, when my patients here in the US ask me that, I say, it's birthday cake. And they say, really? And I say, yes. And then they get it. We get cataracts with age. The wear and tear of aging causes the proteins to become hazy, just as cooking clear egg whites, which are also protein, causes them to become white, that is, opaque. In Africa, one of the reasons there are so many blind people is that there are also other causes of cataracts aside from aging. These include poor nutrition and high levels of ultraviolet light exposure. And what do they have in Africa? That's right, very high levels of UV radiation, few sunglasses, and in general, much poorer nutrition than in developed countries. All of this results in more cataracts, more blindness, and cataracts and blindness occurring at much younger ages. We commonly operate on people between 20 and 50 years old in Zambia, whereas we operate mainly on people between 60 and 90 years old in the US. Losing your sight is devastating at any age, but particularly when you are young, because you have so many years then to live being blind. So, back to Mrs. K. She said her eyesight had slowly worsened over many years, and she'd been completely blind for at least 5 years. She had become totally dependent on others for even the simplest tasks. She had to be led around her village by her daughter to keep from stumbling into open cooking fires or being knocked over by wandering cattle or oxen. Amazingly, a very real danger in Zimba and all over sub-Saharan Africa. I told you those cattle would come up again. In many parts of the world, blindness is more than a medical condition. It steals independence, burdens families, and limits entire communities. That's why in Africa, a blind person is called a mouth with no hands. These people need food, but they cannot contribute to the family's survival. Before she lost her eyesight, Mrs. K worked as a seamstress, earning an income for her family. But after going blind, she could no longer do that work or help out on the family farm. Her daughter, Linda, had to take care of her, while also struggling to run their small farm, raising corn, fruit, vegetables, and goats. All of this left Linda no time to take and sell their produce at the Daly's farmers market, eliminating their only source of income. So Linda's daughter, Mrs. K's granddaughter, Susan, whose face Mrs. K had never really seen clearly, had to drop out of school to help with the farm. The hope that Susan could continue in school and be the first in the family to graduate from high school were dashed. I came to learn that this is a very common story. We can easily imagine the effect of blindness on one person, but the devastating effect spreads across three generations of these families. Three lives are ruined, and a family's hope for the future is destroyed. I told Mrs. K we could help, and that it was likely she would see again if we did an operation. She nodded yes and made her mark on a consent form, but with resignation, it seemed to me. There was no fear. She clasped my hand and told me she trusted me. But it seemed she did not believe that this darkness, which had lasted so long, could possibly be lifted. The next day, she underwent a 15-minute cataract surgery, one of many we did that day. It went very well. At the end of the operation, her eye was bandaged tightly shut to help it heal. This type of bandage blocks all vision. She would have to wait to know if she would see again. The next morning, we removed her eye patch. She hesitated, blinking as her eyes adjusted. Then slowly, she looked around, first in confusion, then in astonishment. Tears welled. She smiled widely, first in disbelief, then in joy. She reached out to her daughter to touch her, seeming to need that contact to confirm that this person, who had not been able to see clearly for years, was really her daughter. Overcome with emotion, Mrs. K began dancing. In an instant, she had regained her independence, dignity, and her role as a productive part of the family, rather than a burden. Her daughter was freed from the burden of full-time caregiving, and her granddaughter, Susan, who was a straight A student, was able to return to school. The family was back on track. Oh, yes, and as you've guessed, it was indeed Mrs. K who made me the new surgical cap I now wear in the operating room. She wanted to show her appreciation and demonstrate how she was now able to work again. She was proud and happy when I immediately put it on, and I wear it in surgery to honor and remember her. Mrs. K's story illustrates why we must work together to eliminate avoidable blindness. When a person goes blind, it doesn't affect that person alone. It disrupts whole families, limits income, restrains opportunities, and cripples entire communities. Curing blindness has the opposite effect. It restores livelihoods, educational possibilities, and economic stability. And I'll tell you something more. I've done over 15,000 cataract surgeries in my career, but the feeling you get when someone gets their vision back never grows old. It's my favorite thing, and I'm glad to be able to share that with you. So now you've heard Mrs. K's story. Perhaps you can imagine what it would be like to be her, blind. But let's do an experiment, a thought experiment that will allow you to understand that even better. Albert Einstein was famous for proposing thought experiments. It's how he came up with his famous theory of relativity. And who are we to argue with Albert Einstein? So here's our thought experiment. Simple. Close your eyes tightly. Keep them closed. Don't peek. This is what it's like to have severe cataracts. You can tell if the lights are on or off, but that's about it. In Zambia, we see many people whose cataracts are so dense they can't even do that. Their world is completely dark. They can't tell if it's day or night. In fact, Mrs. K was like that. So imagine navigating life like this, not for a few seconds, not for a few minutes, but forever. Could you find your way home? Could you cook? Could you work? Could you take care of your children? Now imagine you live in a place with rocky, irregular, unpaved roads, no guide dogs, no beeping crosswalk signs, no running water, no one to cook for you. There's no indoor plumbing. Finding your way to the outhouse is a daily struggle. Farm animals, we remember those cattle. They roam the roads. Open cooking fires burn in the street. Tree branches with long, sharp thorns grow along every path. Every step is a hazard. Every day is a struggle. This is the daily reality for 40 million people worldwide, equivalent to the entire population of Canada or California. 40 million people who are completely blind. Many hundreds of million more have very severe sight loss short of blindness. So, okay, that's enough. Open your eyes. That was a bit over 1 minute. Think about what it would be like if it was the rest of your life with little hope of a cure. Now, here are a few facts which will explain why we work in Zambia. First, as I just stated, there are 40 million blind people worldwide. And importantly, 90% of those people live in poor countries. Zambia is a very poor country. It has a GDP of about $1,300 per capita. That's equivalent to $3.50 per day per person. In the rural south, where our Zimba Eye Hospital is, people are even poorer, most subsisting on less than $1 per day. And sadly, Zambia is not the only poor country with lots of blind people in it. The map here illustrates this point. It shows us the prevalence of vision loss. That is, how many people suffer from poor vision in different regions of the world. I want to highlight two main facts that jump out from this map. The regions colored dark blue have very low rates of vision loss. We can see that this happy situation exists for us in the US and also in the rest of the developed world, including Europe and Australia. And this is what I meant at the beginning of the talk when I said we do a good job at home, preventing and treating problems that cause loss of vision. So there are relatively few people who can't see in our countries, very few cases of avoidable blindness. The regions in the dark orange color have rates of vision loss which are the highest in the world, many times higher than in the developed world. As you see, this is the situation on the Indian subcontinent and in sub-Saharan Africa. Zambia sits right in the middle of southern sub-Saharan Africa and has a very high prevalence of vision loss, as do the countries that surround it. This is why we have chosen to work there. There are many blind people in this region. This is where help is needed most in trying to prevent or reverse avoidable blindness. So the takeaway is that in poor countries, there are many blind people. It's sobering to remember 90% or 36 million out of the 40 million blind people worldwide live in poor countries. And remember, there are hundreds of millions more who have very severe vision loss but are not completely blind, but still have tremendous difficulties with daily activities, working, taking care of their families, taking care of themselves. Most of these people also live in poor countries. So we've learned that there are 40 million blind people in the world, 36 million of whom live in poor countries, along with many more who see very poorly. Here are two more startling facts. First, 80% of this blindness is avoidable, either preventable or curable. We have the ability right now to prevent or cure 32 million out of the 40 million cases of blindness that exist on the earth today. Second, over half of all blindness, that's more than 20 million people worldwide, is caused by cataracts, a completely curable condition. If you do surgery on cataracts, you get the vision back in almost every case, no matter how bad the cataracts are, even if they have caused total blindness, as in the case of Mrs. K. So Remember how it was with your eyes closed, blind, thinking about how life would be if you were living in a place like Zimba. So, what if the cause was cataracts like Mrs. K, but you could not obtain care? It would feel bad. But good news. As we saw with Mrs. K, cataracts, the leading cause of avoidable blindness, cannot only be cured, but it can be done with a 15-minute surgery for about $50 in supply costs per person. That's $50 in supply cost per person. In fact, it's possible to cure every single case of cataract blindness worldwide. That's most of the unnecessary blindness right there. We don't need new technology. There are no new discoveries necessary to achieve this. Yet, millions remain blind, not because the cure doesn't exist, but because these millions cannot access the cure, because safe and effective cataract surgery is not available where they live. This is what I meant at the start of this presentation when I said, where you are born determines if you will live with good eyesight or go blind. So, why can't people in Zambia and sub Saharan Africa get cataract surgery to cure their blindness? It's simple because there aren't enough eye surgeons in these countries. In high income countries like ours, there are about 75 to 150 ophthalmologists per million people. And these eye surgeons are well trained and they have excellent facilities, supplies, and equipment so they can provide widely available, high quality care. In sub Saharan Africa, there are just two eye surgeons per million, the worst ratio anywhere in the world. Sadly, that two per million is an overestimate. Many ophthalmologists stop practicing or rarely perform surgery due to a lack of proper training, equipment, or facilities, making it impossible to provide the care their patients desperately need. This is why people like Mrs. K travel for days to reach an eye surgeon, because for millions, there is no ophthalmologist, no eye surgeon nearby. This was the reality we saw firsthand in Zambia. So, what's the answer? It's simple. We need more well trained eye surgeons doing more cataract operations every day for years and years in these areas. How do we do that? Well, that is the question, and one that troubled me from my first day in Zambia. It was at the end of that very first day of surgery in Zambia, I lay awake that night in a hot, dark room trying to sleep. We had done a lot of great operations. Our large group of post-operative patients were camped outside the hospital, and I knew they would see well again tomorrow when we removed their bandages. So why did I feel troubled? I had expected to feel great about what we were doing. It was because I knew it wasn't enough. There were so many people who needed help and so few of us to help them. We'd never get to them all. In fact, most of the people in Zambia and its surrounding countries who are blind will never see an eye surgeon and will die blind. We need more eye surgeons. So, how do you make eye surgeons? Well, I thought back. I thought to my own journey to become first a physician, and then an eye surgeon, then to establish a practice, and ultimately to end up there in Zimba doing cataract surgery. It took years of specialized training, and it required a country that had invested in medical education, hospitals, and much other infrastructure. I remember the first time I ever observed a cataract surgery procedure when I was still a medical student. It was a delicate ballet of an operation that restores our most precious sense permanently. Truly, it's the best operation in the world. I was immediately hooked. That was what I wanted to do with my life. turned out to be the right choice for me. I love my job. I have happy patients. I've taught many young surgeons to do this beautiful and brilliant operations at my alma mater, and it's felt good to contribute to the quality of life for my patients and and to society as a whole. However, as I practiced, I still felt something tugging at me, a need to go beyond the narrow confines of the city, state, or nation in which I practice, but to try to serve those truly most in need. Even before working in Africa, I knew about this lack of access to cataract surgery and that the lives of millions of unnecessarily blind people and those of their families are shortened and made miserable because of it. I knew that blindness causes poverty and poverty causes blindness. And in this way, this most curable of major disabilities can prevent whole societies from developing. So and we importantly includes my wife, Dr. Nancy Jameson, who's also an ophthalmologist, with the same drive that I have to help those in great need. We traveled to Zambia at the invitation of our partners, a group called International Vision Volunteers, who run the Zimba Eye Hospital, to do what we could do to help. What we saw, as illustrated by Mrs. K's story and repeated many times for many equally deserving and appreciative people, changed our lives. Being immersed with the people of sub-Saharan Africa, seeing their suffering, which they bear with immense stoicism, and realizing that when you leave, there will be more blind people in the region than when you arrived, because more people are going blind every day than all the eye surgeons in Zambia, including you, can cure in a day. Well, that makes you lay awake at night. Okay, so does the heat and humidity. As I lay there, in fact, I calculated that if every Western ophthalmologist I knew came to Zambia to operate, it wouldn't be enough. We are temporary workers. It hadn't worked and cannot work that way. What is needed is an ever increasing number of local surgeons who would stay in Zambia and the surrounding countries and dedicate their entire careers to restoring sight. That realization led to the creation of our Eye Surgeons International Group and our ambitious three-phase project to greatly increase the delivery of high-quality eye care, and specifically cataract surgery, to Zambia and the surrounding countries of sub-Saharan Africa. Phase one consists of increasing the number and quality of surgeries we do in our current hospital, the Zimba Eye Hospital and Clinic. We are well underway and making good progress in this phase. Just this November, a shipping container of new equipment arrived in Zimba, and an ESI team of nurses, technicians, and doctors was there to train our local staff and doctors to use this new equipment. New and better techniques were taught, more and better surgery is being done. In fact, the maximum capacity of the faculty at about 1,500 cases per year will soon be reached. These improvements are helping more individual, and that's a very good thing, but it's not near enough to dent the backlog of blindness, which is why phase one also includes, through improved technology and personnel, an increase in our teaching capacity. With our new microscope, high definition video screens, and satellite technology, we will increase the number of young surgeons we train every year, resulting in ever increasing numbers of safe and effective operations being done across the region by our trainees. We estimate that this will contribute at least an additional 500 cases per year and increasing. If we are able to secure funding, we will add a second full-time local ophthalmologist later this year and build a wet lab to improve teaching further, improving our effective surgical volume by 1,000 more cases per year. But this will still not be enough to solve the problem. Our current facility is just too small and at its maximum capacity for teaching and surgery. It cannot be expanded. It's bursting at at the seams. So, as phase two, which is well into the planning stage, we are building a new and much larger ophthalmology hospital and teaching campus to increase our capacity to 500 sight restoring surgeries every year. This will also allow us to expand our teaching program, which will consist of expanded cataract surgery training programs for fellows, residents, and clinical officers, as well as for the teams necessary to deliver comprehensive eye care, including specialty eye nurses, surgical technicians, medical technicians, and optometrists. We will begin to train some of the very first subspecialty ophthalmologists in sub Saharan Africa, including specialists in retinal diseases, glaucoma, and pediatric eye diseases. Ultimately, it will be these graduates and these trainees who will be the ones who will solve this problem. If we can help them establish productive practices all over the region, just as I and my fellow residents did, these young surgeons will take care of their people, perform the many surgeries every year, and as their numbers increase and they in turn teach new surgeons, there will be very little unnecessary blindness. This happy, virtuous cycle will, as it did for the family of Mrs. K, restore and promote personal and societal prosperity. To achieve this, a third phase will involve partnering with graduates of our program to help them establish a network of community outreach clinics and workers, as well as offices and facilities of their own to deliver care to people all across Zambia and the countries that surround it, each of which has its own crisis of untreated and unnecessary blindness. Through this system, major facilities like the new Zimba Eye Hospital and Clinic, built with your support, will act as central hubs, delivering high quality, efficient sight restoring surgery, while chronic care and follow up for diseases like glaucoma and diabetic eye diseases can be delivered close to the patient's home. Our long-term vision is to create a self-sustaining eye care system staffed by local doctors, nurses, and technicians, where high-quality treatment and training spread throughout the sub-Saharan Africa. I hope this story has helped you understand the problem of avoidable blindness in Zambia and sub-Saharan Africa, and how it affects people who, like you and me, just want to live life as productive members of society and care for those we love. I hope I've helped you understand that this is a solvable problem. Cataract surgery takes 15 minutes. It costs as little as $50 per person, $25 per eye. Yet millions remain blind because the world, and that's us, have not yet truly made this a priority. A few figures. For $1 billion, equivalent to the revenue generated by the Super Bowl, just one Super Bowl, we could eliminate cataract blindness worldwide. That's 20 million people who could be permanently cured. Now, that would be a great fundraiser. In Zambia, $20 million could pay for the supplies to cure every one of the 400,000 people with severe and blinding cataract. At this year's price of $8 million for a 30-second Super Bowl ad, we could pay to cure all 400,000 people for what it costs to buy a 75-second Super Bowl advertising spot. Now, I liked some of the Super Bowl ads, but wow, I'd like to cure those 400,000 people more. You know, we've done big things before. We eliminated smallpox. We can eliminate avoidable blindness in that same way if we work together. Helen Keller, who knew quite a lot about blindness, once said, "Just because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." Each of us can do something, whether through advocacy, financial support, spreading awareness. We all have a role to play in ending avoidable blindness. With your help, we can and must do much more. So let's do it. because sight is more than just vision. It's independence, dignity, and life itself. Thank you for listening. Thank you again.
What is marvelous God? He has done marvelous things for us.